Set. And are we recording now? You'd think I'd have it figured out by now, but I still don't. I think we're recording episode 292 with Mr. Jefferson Morley, author of James Jesus Ghost, the story about James Jesus Angleton, which I put in as all the authors I've had on. I openly say top 5 books all time for me, up there with Ravenrock, Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. It's stuff, Operation Paperclip, Annie Jacobson. Yours is up there. I read Our Man in Mexico, which is also about the CIA and JFK and all the hairiness that went on with that. But as you were just explaining to me, you said you have a new ebook out, and it's your personal quarrels with the CIA.
Yeah, so this is the story of a lawsuit that I filed in 2003
Okay.
for certain JFK assassination records. And it's the story of the lawsuit, which went on for an incredible 16 years. Revealed some very interesting information about the CIA and the JFK story, but also and the reason I wrote it is to illuminate this larger question of how the law actually treats something like the JFK assassination. When you actually get in a court and put information in front of a judge, what happened? How does the law treat this subject? And specifically, I filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, so how do these laws function around an issue like the JFK assassination, where there's lots of interest and lots of secrecy? And so my book, available on Kindle, Morley versus CIA, tells this story. 5 different trips to federal appeals court in Washington, D.C., multiple appearances before Brett Kavanaugh. And really, you get a very good look at just how deferential these judges are to the CIA, specifically, not in general. I mean, they are deferential in general to the secretive agencies, but they're very deferential on the JFK issue specifically. And the way the law is interpreted by most judges, including Brett Kavanaugh, is basically that if the CIA says you have no right to see it, you have no right to see it, and the courts will not question that. So I tried, I pushed in multiple different ways. I won. That's why the lawsuit went on for 16 years. But in the end, our court system is really stacked in favor of the CIA and against full disclosure and public information.
Do you think there's any how accurate do you think it is the CIA's claim it's our methods and our sources that we have to protect versus some hairy stuff went on and it's just we can hide behind it and no, you can't have it?
I mean, I think it's the material is embarrassing. It wouldn't threaten national security if it was made public. It wouldn't put anybody's life in danger.
Yeah.
I mean, it might theoretically disclose something to our enemies that they don't already know, although that strikes me as extremely unlikely. We're talking about ancient records, involving a country, Cuba, which poses no threat to us. Or the Soviet Union, a country which no longer exists. So, the national security arguments in these cases, I think, are almost always specious. And let me just give you an example. So there's still lots of JFK records still withheld from public view. My lawsuit revealed 1,100 CIA records that had never been released in any form. That means so the entire document is public. It's not like, a word or a paragraph is taken out. No, the entire thing, 1,100 documents, and this is 50 years after the fact. Now, let's say there was the name of, a confidential agent in there. You could take out the name and you would delete one name or maybe one line. You wouldn't delete the whole document. It's just way overclassified and it's completely indefensible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not that this would not endanger anybody. This would only endanger the agency's reputation and its budgets on Capitol Hill.
Yeah. Now, do you think to me, the 2 most likely arguments is what it covers up is they're going to hide behind sources and techniques and methods. Obviously, that's not going to be true. It's 57 years ago. Do you think they're hiding behind incompetence? They're going to see that, we fumbled it was on the 1-yard line. We could have tagged Oswald at any time. Or the much sexier that it was a CIA hit. Which do you lean towards? Obviously, it's all speculation.
Well, I think it's difficult to tell, but the argument that, well, they're just hiding their incompetence. I mean, a lot of people like to assume that and say that, no, it couldn't possibly be hiding something serious. They're only hiding their incompetence. Maybe, but we got to see the documents to know. And this is the important point. There's no reason to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they're just hiding incompetence. Because if you look at the history of disclosure and classification and malfeasance in this case, they have repeatedly destroyed evidence, misinterpreted evidence, overclassified evidence, and they've hidden lots of things that are not incompetence, that are in fact malfeasance and misconduct. So, what remains? I wouldn't assume it's just incompetence. I don't assume that at all. We need to see those records to know. That's the only way to know.
Yeah.
I don't make any assumptions, but the CIA certainly does not deserve the benefit of the doubt when it comes to what's in secret records.
Yeah, right. Yeah, see, the CIA is an unfaithful partner, and it's not that they've never given you reason to question them, and then they came home late one night and they just want to go to bed. It's they came home drunk as hell, with sex hair, and they're saying, "Don't look at my phone,"
Right.
and you're like, Can you just ease my mind?" And they're like, "Why do you want to see it?" And you're like, "Just ease my mind." And it's like, no. And it was like, "But that was 5 years ago. Can I?" No. And that's kind of what it's like.
Yes.
Granted, it's all speculation. We don't have any exact fingerprint, but
wait, let me just say something there.
Okay.
It's not all speculation, right? Okay. I mean, we have a very firm foundation of evidence that points to high-level misconduct in the Kennedy assassination, and may well point, I believe, to CIA operations involving Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So when we talk about what's in there, we're talking about very valid questions about one of the most important issues in American history. So what we're looking at is not to speculate more, we're looking to nail down the rest of the story, which we deserve because it's our history. It doesn't belong to the CIA, right? It belongs to the American people. We paid for it. It's our country. So we need to get that information.
Yeah. And as I read more of these books and have been looking at them for years and learn more about the CIA and everything, I mean, the most, harped on one is Operation Northwoods, but I mean, everything they do, man, and then to top it all off, Angleton's just sketchiness around it all. Just his weirdness, his dodginess, what CIA is a big mansion and I don't know every room, whatever the loose quote is. Which is the weirdest quote you could ever give. Like, again, back to the unfaithful partner. It's if you just looked them in the eyes and you're like, "Were you cheating on me?" And they were like, "It was a crazy night and maybe stuff happened." You'd be like, "What? What happened?" And it's Angleton, of all people, the head of counterintelligence. It's a paraphrasing. The CIA is a big house and I don't know all the rooms, so I don't know who hit Jack.
Yeah. This is a story that I tell in The Ghost, my biography of Angleton.
Yeah.
He was in a position to know, and he was, if he says, well, I'm not going to quite say what was going on here, in terms of the Kennedy assassination, we should absolutely take that seriously.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. It seems, for everyone listening, as I said at the beginning, The Ghost by Mr. Moore, excuse me, and Man in Mexico will both be in the description and the top comment. Excuse me. CIA putting a hit on me. Angleton was the highest placed guy. He knew all of this, and he did move around like a ghost, and he was in with J. Edgar Hoover, and he did have, if there was anyone that would be able to do this, and it's what I've thought for a long time, and your book kind of drove it home, is that he could have built in plausible deniability into the very fabric of the plot to where it's not that only two people in the world know, it's that I don't think there are documents. I think that there's probably crumbs leading. This is my personal speculation, but I think
no, that's exactly right. That's exactly right because covert operations, as one agency hand once said, are designed to be secret from conception to eternity.
Yes.
Right. So if you're doing that, you never would write anything down. Right.
Yeah.
If that's your, so You have to look at the secondary effects of a secret operation. And that's where you can see evidence of the operation. It's not going to be described to you, but it's going to be referred to in other areas. And one of the striking things about the JFK story and what we've learned in the last 20 years especially is just how intensive the CIA surveillance of Lee Harvey Oswald was before the assassination, right? And again, another point to my friends who say, well, sure, yeah, he defected to the Soviet Union, so of course they paid attention to him, but they really weren't interested in him. It's said, they really didn't. There's two things to understand there. One, the people who say that are not really familiar with the records, because what the records show is that interest in Oswald intensifies over time from 1959 to 1963. Yeah. He defects to the Soviet Union in October 1959. The CIA opens a file on him within a week of that, and Angleton specifically opens the file. And so for the next 4 years, they're watching him as he goes here and there. And whenever his name comes up, his information about him is forwarded to the very top of the CIA, to Angleton's office. So, the idea, well, they weren't really paying attention to him, that's a complete misunderstanding of how the CIA worked. If they were keeping track of Oswald and they were interested in him, and they were, from 1959 to 1963, the CIA counterintelligence office collected 45 to 50 documents on Lee Harvey Oswald, the very obscure man who nobody was allegedly interested in. And so they knew a lot about him, and their interest did not diminish over time. Their interest increased over time. So the idea that they were paying attention to him, but they didn't really care about him, that's just not true. They were really using him for intelligence purposes.
Yeah.
And that's really the new reality that we've come to understand in the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. And that's an important point. And there are 2 points, or I guess one of them, just from the book, is who was it that asked, like, did we have any men in Dallas? Who was it that question?
Richard Helms.
Yeah.
Angleton's boss and the deputy director, the number 2 man in the CIA, was asked, what was your reaction to the assassination? And he told CBS News in 1992, make sure we had no one in Dallas on that day. It's a very interesting quote. Think about that. The president is killed, and the director of the clandestine service doesn't say, he makes sure. Well, why would you say that?
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
It's the same thing with Angleton. I mean, the mansion.
Yeah. It's like, that's a very revealing comment. So, the fact that even the people who were most directly involved, the way they talk about it induces suspicion. I mean, that's a natural reaction to have. Now, you can concoct an interpretation and say, oh, he was a public servant and he couldn't possibly have been lying, and I knew his brother, and all sorts of things. But for the average person, when you hear a comment like that, you are entitled to say, wow, that's really weird.
Yeah.
You're the head of the clandestine service, and your reaction, we get blamed. Wow.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the CIA in this period.
Yeah. And that's what I always try to tell people, and that's what I myself try to look at it as, is remove the big marble floor, the Central Intelligence Agency. Remove all of that. Remove it all and just look at it with your eyes. It's just.
Yeah. And I'd like to say another thing too,
Sure.
because, like, intelligence agencies also do good things.
Sure.
They keep track of climate change. They analyze political things, and and CIA should exist, and what have they done in the past and all that. But yeah, the point is, strip away, and then we have a lot of mystique in our heads about the CIA, good and bad, and it really helps to strip that away and say, look at these actions, and what did they tell you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I try and do in my books. Strip
Yeah.
away that mythology and say, what did it really look like to the people who were there? To
Yes.
the people in the CIA.
Yes.
What did it look like in their eyes?
Yes.
So, Our Man in Mexico is the story of Win Scott, the CIA station chief in Mexico in the 60s, firsthand, close witness to the events leading to Kennedy's assassination. Very well placed. One of the most outstanding intelligence officers of his generation, according to his colleagues. So what he thought about the assassination is far more important than what I think,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
he was there.
Yeah.
I was in kindergarten when it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
So,
It's
so,
yeah.
so when I go out there, I'm not looking to tell, what do I think about who killed Kennedy? I mean, who cares?
Yeah.
But what did I think? That's really interesting. What did Angleton think?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting question. And that's what my books try and get at. What did these events look like in their eyes? And actually, once I started digging, you can actually find a lot of firsthand evidence about that. We don't have to speculate about, what was their theory and all that. We know what they did because we have the documentation and we have interviews with people who were there. So, that makes that brings the picture together for us. And that's really what makes, an understanding of a complex event like the Kennedy assassination possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And and to go back and touch on what you said earlier, this definitely isn't a all intelligence and military is look, Dwight Eisenhower is the one that gave the military industrial complex speech. That doesn't mean he hates, I mean, he's Dwight Eisenhower, right? Smedley
Right.
Butler is the one that said war is a racket. But I mean, he was a major general. Like, so that does, I love the United States. I have friends and family that work in the intelligence community, not family, kind of in family, not really. Point is though, is yeah, this isn't a blanket of hey, they're all demons and they're out there and it's the new world order. No, it's just when you look at the facts and the things they said. And another important point, so what I want to touch on is touched on the quote about Dallas is we know that with Operation Northwoods, Lemitzer, right, Kent or RFK, we know that they wanted to bulldoze their way into Cuba really at any cost. And go look up Operation Northwoods. This is beyond the scope of this podcast right now, but it's a false flag to give us justification to go in and take out Castro. The fact that they didn't use the assassination of Kennedy as just, I mean, if there's ever been a blank check to go in and take out Cuba, it's shooting the president in the head. The fact that they didn't do that tells me that they weren't worried about Cuba. It was something else, right? Mr. Morley, you there? Oh, you broke up.
Say that again, Tommy. You
Sorry,
broke up there a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, you broke up for a second too. The
Yeah.
fact that they didn't use
You
that.
froze a little bit. I missed the last comment.
Okay, it's the fact that they didn't use the assassination of Kennedy as a blank check to go in and just bulldoze Cuba. To me, that says that it was independent. It had nothing to do with him,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what gets a little hairy. And didn't Castro say it too? I hate systems, not men.
Well, yeah. I mean, I never thought. I've never put any credence. Don't see any evidence to support the theory that Castro was responsible for Kennedy's assassination, because for one reason he was a Marxist-Leninist, and exactly that was his quote. He thought you had to replace the system, not the man. He never believed in assassination as a tactic because he didn't think it would work. He was a revolutionary. He wanted to overthrow the whole system. So I don't think there's any evidence that Castro would have, tried to kill Kennedy or was involved in Kennedy's assassination.
Yeah. It almost seems too destabilizing for it to have been the USSR, right? We wanted stability in the sense that we had nukes pointing at each other. That doesn't make
Yeah, and
sense.
also, yeah, and the fact and the U.S. government never received information that the Soviet Union was involved.
Yeah.
Now, did the Soviet Union, know more about Oswald than we knew? Probably. I mean, we do know that they had him under surveillance in the time that he was living in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And we do know that those records were never released in the 1990s by Russia. But there was no evidence that they had manipulated him while he was in the United States after he returned in the summer of 1962.
Yeah. Now, and I know you didn't really kind of touched on this. What or have you written or are you going to write anything on the assassination of RFK?
I have not, and I don't think I'm going to.
Sure.
It's it's a much more enigmatic event, and I just feel like I would put it that way. If I do a book, I want to add something new. So my new book is a third in the trilogy of spies, and this will be a book about Richard Helms and Watergate.
Yes.
So the trilogy, the trilogy of spies is Win Scott,
Mhm.
station chief in Mexico City; James Angleton, chief of counterintelligence; Dick Helms, deputy CIA director and later director. And these three men were friends. They met in the OSS during World War II, and they were friends for the rest of their lives. And so they went on different paths. Win Scott went out in the field to actually do, espionage in the front lines against the enemy. Angleton did counterintelligence in Washington, and Helms did more intelligence collection and became director. So three powerful men, same generation, formative personalities in the CIA. And that's my next book, to be out in 2022.
2022.
Look for that.
Teased. I thought you were going to say 2021. Is all right. All right. Now I've got you for 8 more minutes. Do you think that I didn't pay too much attention? Was there anything of significance about the documents that President Trump had declassified in 2017 or 18 or whenever he did about the Kennedy assassination?
Yeah, actually, there was a lot significant material released, and I can give you a couple of examples. One is we people who had studied the case carefully knew this before, but we never had the piece of paper that proved it. And that was in 2017, when President Trump, or when the law required federal agencies to release the last of their JFK records, and the agencies released a lot of records and withheld a lot of records. But in the released records, one of the things that appeared was the notation about the decision to And this is one indicator of just how closely they were watching him, which was within a week of his defection to the Soviet Union in November 1959. The CIA opens a file on him. Angleton's office opens a file on him. And they simultaneously decide that they're going to open the mail of his mother. Okay? Now, this was an illegal mail surveillance program started by Angleton called Lingual. And Lingual, by 1958, was opening the letters of about 10,000 people a year. They opened international mail, basically, going through the post office in Astoria, Queens. So Oswald had been in the Soviet Union for about a week, at which time the CIA decided, we are going to read this guy, the mail of this guy's mother. Okay, that's how interested they were in him. So Tommy, if I'm interested in you, right, I might go look and check you out. But if I'm reading your mother's mail to you, you know I am really interested in what's going on in your life, right?
Yeah.
That's how interested the CIA was in Lee Harvey Oswald 4 years before he allegedly killed President Kennedy. That document. So we knew that before. People who had studied the case knew that before. But now we got the list of when that happened. And it happened on November 9th, 1959. So that was the week that they opened his CIA file. That's one of the things that we learned. Another thing was we got the file of a man named Birch O'Neill. And Birch O'Neill, we now know, was one of those aides to Angleton who handled the Oswald file before the assassination. And he handled it for 4 years. We got his file, and we see what he was doing in 1959 at the time. And what he was doing was he was writing reports on defectors. Now, We've never seen any report that he wrote on Lee Harvey Oswald, but we know, and the file of Birch O'Neill confirms again that high-level CIA counterintelligence officers were interested in Oswald from the start. So there were things in there. The other part of the story is there's still 15,000 plus documents that are redacted in one form or another, and that Trump did not release. Trump, being Trump, tweeted and said all JFK records have been released ahead of time. Okay, well, unfortunately, all JFK records weren't released, and they weren't released ahead of time. In fact, he had just signed an agreement with Chris Wray and Mike Pompeo, Chris Wray of the FBI and Mike Pompeo of the CIA, acquiescing to the agency's demands that they be allowed to continue keep this material secret. And so that was October 2017. Trump said, we'll revisit this issue again in 4 years. So President Biden is going to face the decision next October what to do about the rest of the JFK files. And he's going to face the same decision Trump faced. And I am quite certain he's going to face the same pressure Trump felt. The agencies are going to go to him and say, we couldn't possibly release this material, or we could release a little bit of it, but we couldn't release it all. That's what I expect. If the last 50 years are any guide, that's what will happen. Now, I'm hoping that President Biden can realize that this is a silly issue. And if he wants to restore confidence in the government should be transparent about it and let the chips fall where they may. That's the challenge. That's the JFK challenge for 2021. Will those documents be made public?
Are we?
Now, and then to go back to your point, Tommy, you said before, so are they hiding something that's just like, just embarrassing, or are they hiding something, deadly secret? I mean, there might be a deadly secret in there. I think it's more likely that they're hiding embarrassment, and they're hiding leads that point to, CIA misconduct. And I think around this fact that the cover story that Lee Harvey Oswald was this guy who nobody knew anything about, and he came out of nowhere and he shot the president, and gee, we're sorry, Mrs. Kennedy. That's BS, okay? He was very well known and was an astonishing, atrocious intelligence failure, the causes of which we still don't know.
Yeah. I'm slowly just beginning to fully believe what they are covering up is a 35 millimeter film of LeMay, Lemitzer, Angleton, and LBJ smoking cigarettes, drinking whiskey and they're going, yeah, let's kill him. Where should we kill him? Let's shoot him in the head. I think that's exact. Should we do it silently? No, very public, and we're gonna have one guy. Here's my buddy. His last name's Zapruder. That's what. At this point, that's all I can conclude. It's the cheating wife, okay. And it's like, you know what? No, it's been 57 years, and you're still kicking it down the road. Just own up. Just own. If anything, who knows, man? Maybe that would be an intelligence win for them. Is because now we're gonna look at them and go, oh my God, they really can do anything. But at this point, no. You know what? I think there's going to be another film of LBJ watching in real time from a helicopter, just going, "Nice shot, kid." That's what. At this point, that's where I am. I'm not even going to try to pretend otherwise anymore. Those aren't. Excuse me. Those aren't Mr. Morley's words. Those are mine. But
thank you, Tommy.
Yes, sir. For the record, those my guests do not. I do not speak for my guests. I rant like a psychopath on here. All right. He's a respected author. Me, not so much. But but in all seriousness, at a certain point, it's going to be, like you said, covert from inception to the end of time. I think that there probably at one point was a handshake on the side of a highway somewhere, and that's it. And it was sealed. And we know about Oswald and Ruby. I think that there were probably other, again, all wild speculation on my part. I bet there are other people that, conveniently died. I think the whole thing was it was a puppet using a puppet using a puppet. And I think one man knew, and it was probably Angleton. Who knows? Maybe he regretted it. Maybe he didn't. Who knows? But I don't think we'll ever know. I think the roads, they keep splitting until they turn to dirt, and then it turns into a field, and then it's just the ocean. And there's no hidden cul-de-sac. It's I don't think we can
Um,
know. I don't think we can know. Maybe my grandkids.
well, I one point of comparison I make sometimes is Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. And if you had polled American historians 50 years ago, say 1965, did Thomas Jefferson, the former president of the United States, have a long-term relationship and children with Sally Hemings, an African-American woman who he owned
Mm-hmm.
and had been property of his family for a long time? If you had polled historians and journalists on that question 50 years ago, you pretty much would have gotten 99% that is fiction, a rumor, and there's nothing to it. It couldn't possibly be true. Okay. Now, if you polled historians today on that same question, you would pretty much get 99% who say, yeah, that is true. That did happen. We do have solid evidence that that happened. So how did we undergo that enormous change in kind of expert, well-informed opinion around the issue? And it happened in a couple of ways. One, new evidence emerged, okay, and also new ways of thinking about evidence. And so one of the things that had been ignored by historians for generations was the story of the Hemings family, which was the story that was handed down in their family, which was we were descended from Thomas Jefferson. And that was a story that was kept alive in that family, and it was well known. And they wrote it down and talked about it at the time. Well, until the 1960s civil rights revolution, people thought, oh, that's just black people talking. There's no need to pay attention to that. Couldn't possibly be true. And then people came along and said, no, wait a second. These people have been saying it. Makes sense. Check it out. So that's one thing. We saw new evidence and we thought about it in a new way. A second thing was technology.
Yeah.
DNA testing came along. We could test and see, were the Hemings descendants, did they have the DNA of Jeffersons, of male Jeffersons? And that testing has been done, and they do. And the only only male Jefferson who was in the vicinity of Sally Hemings 9 months before she had all of her children was Thomas Jefferson. And so what had once been, fiction has been turned into fact. So, the same kind of thing I think can happen in the Kennedy assassination. The government came along and said, oh, no, it's all solved, pay no attention. And people said, well, wait, what about this evidence? What about that evidence? So we found new evidence. People took it seriously just because the government dismissed it. We've got new technology, so new methods of, analyzing photographs, the acoustic evidence. So, we've developed a lot of new ways of thinking about that. And the internet, by enabling us to crunch and organize mammoth amounts of information, is another step forward. And so I think that, I think we can solve the Kennedy assassination. I think we can know what had happened. I mean, I'm not willing to say that we won't know until we have all of the government records.
Yeah.
I mean, the government records that we know exist. So that's a very low bar in my book, right? Because you could obviously conspiracy and not have any records of it, but they haven't even met that low bar yet.
Yeah.
The government has still not met that low bar. So I think we still have to say the jury's out. Not we'll never know, but let's see all that evidence and then we'll talk again.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's it. And I know I've kept you over my time limit, but that's real quick. That's what I agree with, right? Because it's not even like there was a vault of Thomas Jefferson records, and it was like, we can't declassify these yet. And everyone's like, well, can we see them? That didn't even happen. And then genomic sequencing, right, from 2000 to 2010, I think it took $13 billion to sequence. Now you can send away a swab and $50, 23andMe, right?
Yeah.
You can go back and see all that. And the idea of the double helix, Franson and Crick, just discovering that while on LSD, the idea if you had said 100 years ago, there's this thing called DNA and it's in 70 trillion cells in your body, and they would have said that you're high, right? Give me what you're smoking. I think that we're going to actually, yeah, you're getting my mind rolling. That's what it's going to be. There's going to be something where, just like with polymerase chain reaction, PCR, we can take a hair and essentially get the entire I guess, genomic library of a being, and in time you will be able to regrow that thing, right? Kind of like Jurassic Park. In a way, there will be. I'm now believe I'm doing a 180 in real time. Yeah, I think we're going to be able to look at this Zapruder film one day, and there's going to be something that is as alien to us right now in 2020 as genomic sequencing or the very existence of deoxyribonucleic acid in the 1800s. And they're going to be able to look at this Zapruder film, and with some quantum computer, some massive parallel system, they're going to be able to recreate it, and they're going to be recreate it in 3 dimensions and 4 dimensions. You're going to be able to scroll in just like Google. Imagine Google Earth on your phone in World War One. You would have been a god. You're going to be able to in the year 2150. Yeah, see, and that's you can look right there, scroll freeze, see that's Oswald. But if you look over there, see that guy, former Navy SEAL. See that guy, Green Beret. They're on the opposing towers, and we never would have looked. And it's like there are 7 shooters. It's going to be something absurd, right? It's going to be no one knew there was a claymore on the back of Kennedy's seat, and that's what blew, right? It's going to be something insane. Again, my words, not Mr. Morley's, but it's that train of thought. Yeah, you give me hope. I think we will. Now, will you and I see it? I don't know, but I think someone will see it eventually.
Yeah.
But I've kept you over my 30-minute limit. So, Mr. Jefferson Morley, guys, go grab the books. I have yet to recommend a bad book. And Ghost. Man of Mexico's good. Ghost, like I said, top 5 books all time. Legitimately recommend it. Off camera as well. I legitimately recommend it to people. If you like the CIA, you like counterintelligence, you like that whole shadowy world, let alone JFK, that's the book. It's creepy. That's why it's good, is it's unnerving. And I'm gonna grab Morley v CIA, and I'll send you an email. I'd love to have you on again in January, February, whenever. I'll read that one, and then I'll have to go on the long wait until 2022. But
well, let's revisit and talk about the JFK release in October 2021. That's going to be a big deal.
Okay.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens. So.
All right. Well, I will.
On the case.
I'll email you after this, and we'll loosely plan on an October 2021 episode, and we'll get to the bottom of it. Tommy's podcast, you will see. This is where it's going to be disclosed. Is me and Mr. Morley. Mr. Morley, not me. It'll be me taking credit. But Mr. Morley, thank you so much, sir. Both your books as well. I will put the Kindle version in the description in the top comment. Thank you for being here, sir. Thank you as always for putting up with my insanity. And I mean, really, I can't say enough, man. I love Ghost. I truly love Ghost. It's fantastic.
Thanks for having me, Tommy.
Yes, sir. You have a wonderful Christmas. Merry Christmas. God bless America. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you again, Mr. Morley.
Take care.
Bye-bye.